Hello and welcome to part 2 of the Halfling watermill build. In this video I'm going to be cutting out and constructing the base, building all the little bits that go into the sort of surrounding area of the diorama, and I'll be starting the painting process. So to start off, I just marked out on a piece of polystyrene where I wanted the mill to sit. And then, because I didn't have a foam cutter, I sort of constructed one out of a Stanley blade, some coffee stirrers and a candle. This actually worked remarkably well. I wouldn't recommend doing this yourself, but I basically just spent some time carving out the shape I wanted for the stream, and then I sort of carved down the sides and made a slope towards the front. To make it look a bit more realistic. And yeah, this was a remarkably quick and simple process. I was pleasantly surprised. So then all I did was paper mache this with a thin layer of paper mache so I could still see where the marks were. I also built a bridge there, which you can see, out of coffee stirrers, and off camera I also sprayed up the house with just some matte grey primer, and yeah, that's now all pretty much ready to paint. I just started painting the watermill as well, so now everything's got a base coat, and I can start the actual proper painting. So I'm just using some bog standard acrylic paints for this. The brown took I think 3 coats. It wasn't particularly thick paint, and it's also a little bit darker than I'd like, but I quite like the starting dark on the base and then working to lighter. I think that sort of gives it a really cool aged effect. I did exactly the same thing for the watermill, and then I just went around with a smaller brush, filling in any of the detail or areas that I'd missed. And then I just did exactly the same thing for the base, just giving that a brown base coat. Made a bit of an error sticking the bridge on, but I managed to sort of wiggle that out and then paint under it and then stick that back on, so that was all fine. So I finished that up, and then came the disastrous part. So I had this really cheap white paint that I was aiming to just slop on. I mixed it with some of the brown and a bit of yellow to make it look dirtier, and it was just the worst paint I've ever used. It just wouldn't cover. As soon as I put the brush down to sort of spread it around, it picked it back up again, and the entire surface just would not stick to this paint. And it just looked like a total disaster. Well, they say every artwork has an ugly stage. And it doesn't get much uglier than this. So it was at this point that I decided to just throw caution to the wind and just slop on as much of this paint as I could to get it to cover. Still going to need at least 4 or 5 coats to stop that grey from showing through, but at least it's on there, and I can always paint over it again with the brown and the grey for the stone, so it's not the end of the world. And you can see here that when it's slopped on quite thickly, it actually looks like plaster. So we'll just see how it dries, but it's looking much better like that, so I'm happy. So there's been a bit of a hiatus since I did the white paint. I've been really busy over the last few weekends, so I've just been doing this ad hoc and haven't been that bothered about filming. But basically, as you can see now, the paint, all the wet paint is dry, and I've been back over it and painted up all of the brown bits that were a mess with another base coat. So I've got to now work on some of the detailing and do some shading stuff for the wood. Give it a little green door, which I think I'm going to highlight with some gold or something. I also painted up the stones and stuff. They still need a little bit of work, but they're probably just about done at the moment. They just need some black wash. with regards to the base, I put some candles in the house and realised that you could actually see the floor in some areas, not much, but enough to make it look weird that it was just brown. So I painted some really rough wooden floorboards, which you can now see through the windows, so that makes it look a little bit more authentic. I also repainted this bridge because it got absolutely covered in brown paint when I was doing the base. And I also did some grey sort of base coats for the edges of the model and down the stream centre. This is going to be covered in some more foam just to make it look like a brickwork, so it will match the brickwork of the house, and then that will rest the axle of this wheel will sort of rest in there. It's going to protrude up, so it will just sit in there, so it can easily be taken apart for storage and stuff. So yeah, that's just about where I've got. I think I'm at the point now where I can start doing some more detailing on the base, put some sand in the stream, start to do the grass work and stuff, and yeah, it's going to come together. So to decorate the base, I just bought some fake grass and some sand from a model store. I just dropped a little tiny bit of sand into the stream because I see this as quite a high energy environment, so there wouldn't be too much debris in the bottom of it. So it's just a little bit at the bottom with some larger rocks to sort of look like a little bit of a pool forming at the bottom of the stream, and then just some a couple drops of silty bits up towards the top. And then I just sprinkled some base sand around the rest of the base just to sort of give the effect of dirt and bits, and because of the sort of bigger rock clumps in the bag that I bought, they sort of came out and dropped out as well, which looked quite effective, just some random stones around the place. And then I just used this sort of sawdust flocking to start with. I sprinkled this around. It's a mixture of green and yellow, so it sort of gives this grass a sort of mottled effect. But it's super, super, super short because it's sawdust. So it just sort of acts as a base coat, really. It gives the grass a little bit more of a 3D effect when you add it later on if you don't have like a static applicator, which I don't. So I just sprinkled this around quite liberally. And then I gave it another coating with some really, really watered down PVA glue. And when that dries, I'll just shake off and brush off all the excess. And then I'll put on some of the actual longer fake grass. But I might wait until I put the house on before I start doing that. So for the rest of this video, I'm just going to complete the flocking, and then we'll move on to some of the base details and painting the house.